Found the password. Hello guys, Tate99 here, and welcome to today's video where we're doing NRL tips and predictions for round 7 to round 27. Well, better late than never, I suppose. Mostly, teams just want to get ready for Mad Monday. Some teams want to get ready for the finals, but some of them are playing for something just a little bit specialer than that. Without further ado, let's go into it. Opening match sees on Thursday, you have the Brisbane Broncos up against the Melbourne Storm. Now, Brisbane have already been knocked out of finals contention after their loss to the Dolphins last week, and the Melbourne Storm are probably going to do something quite similar to what they did last week in resting a considerate amount of their players, in which, you know, the reserves still put up a very decent effort, and unfortunately, the Sunshine Coast Falcons were just edged out by the Cowboys. I do feel like the Storm might do something a little bit similar, but may bring in some of their more fresher players, because in all honesty, I feel this might just be a conspiracy, but I think Craig Bellamy just doesn't want Jerome Hughes to win the Dally M. But I do think even if it is the Sunshine Coast Falcons that do play for the Storm this weekend, I just think the Broncos are just already looking ahead for next season, and I'm just going to straight up say I think the Storm will take the win on this one. I would think maybe 13 plus. Brisbane could try to regather themselves and get ready for next year. And because then next year, I feel like Kevin Walters' job is on the line. Because, I mean, I know it's a bit of a trend of teams who make the grand final just straight up not make the finals the next year. But it's been pretty woeful. Now we go to Friday, 6 p.m. But I'm going to move past it. It deserves its own video. We'll talk about the Tigers and Eels tomorrow. So we're going to advance straight through that, and we're going to go to Friday, 8 p.m, and it is the derby when it comes to Australian Rugby League. It is the South Sydney Rabbitohs up against the Sydney Roosters. Now, South Sydney have pretty much cemented themselves as finishing in the bottom 4 regardless of what happened. It's just been a very horror year for South Sydney. And for the Sydney Roosters, they have locked themselves into a top 4 spot, so they will have at least that protection zone if they do lose in the first week of the finals, but they could finish as high as second if they win, and if the Panthers go on to lose their final round match. But also, in terms of context, last week against Canberra, the Rugby League gods really said F you to the Roosters, because Sam Walker ACL out for the season. Brandon Smith's done pretty much almost for the season as well. Victor Radley also out for the rest of the season in one fell swoop, and they lost to Canberra last week. And yeah, it's kind of a pretty interesting equaliser here, and I think this is going to tell into a very close game, because obviously the Rabbitohs are going to rise to the occasion, because form doesn't matter in these types of matches. And I'm going to go and say I think the Roosters will still win. I think it'll be a lot closer, but I think by about 8. I think the Roosters will get the job done over their rivals. Now moving on to Saturday, 3 p.m, and this is one of the matches that could potentially have an impact on trying to get the final spot in the NRL finals. It is the St George Illawarra Dragons up against the Canberra Raiders. Now, the Dragons obviously almost completed one of the greatest comebacks in rugby league history last week against Parramatta, but unfortunately it was too little too late. And Canberra's knocking off some pretty decent teams in the last couple of weeks. They beat Penrith, and then they beat the Roosters last week, and now it is a pretty interesting situation, as these are technically 2 of the mathematical teams that could still make the finals. But unfortunately for them, their for and against is what's going to kind of put them in a bit of a bad spot. Plus also, the other 2 teams fighting for it are also playing each other, which is not great. But yeah, I think the Dragons have done very well and improved themselves this year. I think Canberra is sort of the expected drop-off, I guess. I mean, I had them coming last this year, which obviously didn't happen. You also got Elliot Whitehead, who's done like 3 separate charges in that one match against the Roosters, which I don't know how he's done. But in terms of this match, I'm going to say that the Dragons will get the job done. And essentially, pretty much, the only real way any of these 2 teams can clinch 8th is pretty much if the final round of the season goes to a draw. Now we go to Saturday, 5:30, and we've actually got a very decent matchup, to say the least. It is 2 teams currently in the finals. It's 5th versus 6th. It is the Canterbury Bulldogs up against the North Queensland Cowboys. Last week, the Canterbury Bulldogs actually played a team that actually, you know, has hope, and lost. So there was no partying in Belmore. It's like the things that happen when you actually play a team that's got aspirations. In all honesty, I'm actually really happy the Bulldogs are doing well, but just their fans are getting a little bit carried away. Kind of like a certain other team that did quite well last year, then got carried away with their fans. Even though I think this year's is a bit less impressive. But obviously the North Queensland Cowboys did get the win against the Sunshine Coast Falcons, and that's what I'm going to be calling them for the rest of the match, because no way they beat the Storm that game. Realistically, none of them can make it into the bottom four unless, say, the Bulldogs batter the Cowboys and then the Sharks just get nuked, essentially. But, yeah, so pretty much this is battling for pretty much who plays the 8th placed side. It's either going to be the Bulldogs or the Cowboys, and in this game, I'm going to go with the Bulldogs continuing their home run of like decent, performances and stuff like that. I think they'll bounce back from last week and get the job done against the Cowboys. And then we go to Saturday, 7:35 p.m. You've got the Penrith Panthers taking on the Gold Coast Titans. Now, the Penrith Panthers, they've lost out on the minor premiership. I did predict them to get the minor premiership this year, but the Storm did really well because of course they do, and Penrith now just got to settle themselves currently for second. They can hold on to second and take on third, which currently stands as the Roosters, in the first round of the finals if they get this win against the Gold Coast. And the Gold Coast last week were in their match against the Knights. They had patches, but just the Knights kind of just played over the top of them because, the Knights have got, obviously out of nowhere, have decided to actually play good for once this season and just, starting to go on a bit of a run. But the Titans now trying to basically fight themselves out of the bottom four, essentially. Which I've just looked at the ladder and realised they can't do that because the team they have to leapfrog is the Warriors, and they have a bye. So the Titans are going to get finish in the bottom four regardless, unfortunately. But yeah, for this match, I do expect Penrith to actually rest a whole heap of their players this game, but I think the result will still remain the same. It'll be closer, but I do think Penrith will still just get the win. Now, Sunday, 2 p.m, this is a rivalry match, definitely, I feel like, in the context. This is the Manly Sea Eagles up against the Cronulla Sharks. It is 4th versus 7th. Now, the Sharks could see themselves finish as high as 3rd, depending on if there was batterings. If the Sharks dominantly beat the Eagles and if the Roosters get belted by South, you can see the Sharks move into 3rd. But honestly, I feel like they're probably fine with where they are at the moment. And Manly, with a win, could pretty much jump up to 6th to basically play either the Bulldogs or host the Bulldogs or the Cowboys, depending on whoever wins that match. So that's a little bit of thing. So it's a home final for Manly. That's what they're going to be playing for. And the Sharks the last couple of weeks have just been a bit sort of lopsided, doing the whole piece, get degreasing. Like they could generally, if they really exerted themselves, they could be arguably one of the best teams in the comp, but they just have these performances where they just do not go that well. But Manly, I think, did pretty solidly against the Bulldogs. Granted, without Stephen Crichton, but I'm going to say that I think Manly will get the win, and they will have the home final against either the Bulldogs or the Cowboys, depending on who loses that match. And finally, we need to talk about the match which is pretty certain to be the battle for the 8th. It is the Newcastle Knights up against the Dolphins. Now, the current situation is them, the Dragons, and the Raiders are all tied on 28 points. However, the Dragons and the Raiders have a very bad for and against compared to the other two teams. However, the Knights have minus 48 and the Dolphins actually have a positive one. So, essentially what needs to happen here is whoever wins this game will make the finals. A draw is basically the only realistic way the winner of the Dragons and the Raiders will make the finals. Now, the Dolphins, I feel like, have a bit more of that star power in them. I think they've actually been going quite well, and I think they've been quite unlucky to just be on this outskirt thing. The Knights, in my opinion, because I am a supporter of them, I don't think they've gone that well this year. They've gone on a bit of a run in the last couple of weeks, have had battling with injuries, obviously with Bradman Best, then Callum Ponga with his Liz Frank for about 3 months, so you had those sort of effects at play. But this is where it comes down to it. 4 p.m, final game of the regular season at McDonald Jones. You just sort of like expect this is like, oh, the Knights will come out to the occasion roaring, but Wayne Bennett is the coach and he's probably expecting this. So the thing is, though, I'm a person who usually describe myself as a realist and don't really let my heart come into it. Usually use this whole thing to decide matches, but I don't know, something about this match is, the Knights are going to win this match, and the Knights are going to beat the absolute piss out of them. So yeah, I'm gonna actually back the boys to take the win and get 8th, and then get immediately knocked out in the first week of the finals because we're filling up numbers, but we're gonna keep Adam O'Brien's job. Long term, it'd be nice if we threw it, but you never know. Anyways, that's going to be the end of the video. Thank you all very much for watching. Who do you have for the final round? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you later.